All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Happy Thursday. Appreciate everyone taking some time to join us for this week's Franchise Partner Spotlight webinar. In this case, we actually, instead of having a franchise partner on, we have a key member of the executive team here. I'll be introducing her momentarily. So for anyone that's listening in or has joined us live, if this is the first Spotlight webinar that you've participated in, the purpose of these webinars is really just to give anyone that's interested in learning more about ShelfGenie and our franchise opportunities a chance to hear from some of our franchise owners as well as key members of the home office, just to learn more about our business and ultimately what it takes to be successful. So this is a webinar that we try to do once a week. It's a really good way to get some good information, get answers to your questions. So again, appreciate everyone taking time out of their day to join us. We will open it up periodically throughout the call for Q&A. There's also a chat box, so that's an easy way to submit questions as we kind of move through the hour here today. So if you have a specific question that you'd like Serena to speak to or just anything in general, feel free to submit it to the chat box. Keisha, if you can help me keep an eye on that, I would appreciate it. But like I said, we will unmute everyone periodically and open it up for Q&A. So housekeeping out of the way, it is now my distinct pleasure to introduce everyone to Miss Serena Close. Serena, who has joined us today, as I mentioned, is not a franchise partner, but she is a very key member of the home office. You can see here a little bit of Serena's background and expertise. She's been with ShelfGenie since 2012, so she brings quite a bit of experience to the table. Throughout the majority, I believe you started as a designer, is that correct?
I did, as a part-time designer, no less. I had my own business at the same time.
Yeah, that's right. And so Serena's based in the Chicago area, so she does not live in Atlanta. So started as a designer in Chicago, eventually ended up becoming an employee of the home office. She works with Scott O'Hara, our director of operations, on his team. She has overseen numerous of our corporate markets over the years and still has some responsibility on that side of the business. And then last year, we asked Serena to take on a little bit more of a responsibility in the home office, and she is now the manager of our onboarding and training. So she works very, very closely with all of the new franchise partners that come on board with ShelfGenie. She's really kind of their main point of contact. And usually within a week or so, a lot of times less than that, I go from being a new franchise partner's favorite person, and Serena very quickly replaces me as their best friend and their favorite person. But I'm okay with that. Needless to say, Serena has a ton of experience. I asked her to come on today because I think she can add a lot of value to anyone that is interested in learning more about ShelfGenie and our franchise opportunities. I don't want to steal too much of her thunder because she'll give you a little bit more background and detail around, what her focus has been with ShelfGenie over the years. But, she's got a lot of experience when it comes to recruiting designers and installers and training them and managing them. So that's an area that she can really help a lot of newer franchise partners, especially. And as we talked about, she's worked as a designer. She's very, very good with our 3D design software. She teaches a 3D design class for all of the designers that come into our annual conference every year. So really just a wealth of knowledge. And we'll talk more today about how she works specifically with new franchise owners through what we call our onboarding process, all the way up until they open for business, and then even after they've opened for business. So, and I have to put Serena on the spot just a little bit before we get started. I found out about an hour ago. Today is actually her birthday, so happy birthday, Serena.
Thank you.
And especially a big thank you to you for joining us today on your birthday. So
no problem.
She turned 27 today. She joined.
I was just going to say, it sucks to be 27 again.
Yeah. She joined ShelfGenie as a part-time designer because she didn't have her worker's permit at that time. But without further ado, Serena, again, thanks for coming on today. Maybe just start off by giving a little bit more of your background. You mentioned that you did have your own business when you first started with ShelfGenie. So maybe talk to us a little bit about that. What were you doing before ShelfGenie? How did you end up getting involved? And then what is the evolution of your role looked like over the years since?
Sure. First, thank you very much for even having me on this call. I'm very honored. My role with ShelfGenie, obviously, as you see on the screen, began in 2012. I had my own organizing company that I started in 2005. Prior to my organizing company, I started, and then sold a cleaning company, and all while I was raising my grown-up child now, who is 21 years old. So 2012, I was a member of National Associations of Professional Organizers. Again, I had my business for 7 years before I actually ever heard of ShelfGenie, and it was in the NAPO feed that we kind of have a post board, and people around the region were just here's some tips, here's some information. That's how I first heard about ShelfGenie. I called the corporate office. I got some more information. They asked me to pay $250 for a designer kit. I thought I was going to get ripped off. But I reluctantly paid it anyway because I'm that person that just I love to walk in any door that opens for me. So I was told that I would get my $250 back as soon as I make 10 sales. So my goal was to hurry and quickly make 10 sales, get my $250 back, and I thought I would also leave. When I first started in Chicago, it was under the hands of 3 different franchise partners in corporate, just a little small market, but mostly I was dealing with 3 other franchise partners. It was a little chaotic. We had lots of different rules, lots of things going on. I started very part-time, and when I say part-time, I only gave ShelfGenie 2 days a week, and I was working in my organizing company for the other 5. So when I say minimal, I really mean at bare bones. And I fell flat on my face for the entire year, made lots of mistakes. And then I started screaming, I don't have a lot of support. Unfortunately, the franchise owners that I worked for also had full-time jobs. So there was no support for Serena. It was kind of figure it out, do your best, and you'll hear from me if you make a mistake, which is exactly what happened. But I fell in love with the company, even though I was a hot mess. I literally was a train wreck. But everything that ShelfGenie offered and everything they believed in and the way the business was founded on integrity and morals and do right by the client matched my own personal ethics and morals, which is why I fell in love with ShelfGenie. So I started just eager I want to dig my claws into ShelfGenie and get a little bit more information, like why we do what we do, the different designs. I went to other markets and traveled to see what I was missing. I went to the corporate events, and it kept me excited. And then I just got better because I was eager to get better. I was a sponge. I wanted to know everything. I asked thousands of questions. Eventually, a couple of years, well, actually 1 year went by, and then I realized, hey, I love this a little bit better than my own company. And just so everybody understands what I used to do, as a professional organizer, I more worked in the commercial field. I loved working with businesses, and I helped create strategic flows and processes and helped people realize that you got 20 different people in your company doing the same thing, and then we would analyze that and fix that, and then I would move on to another company. In my personal life, at the same time I was working with commercial businesses, I also donated my time to DCFS, is what we call it out here, for those, it's Department of Children and Family Services.
Okay.
And I worked very closely with the courts and people that got their kids taken away from their home just because the home was a little chaotic. dirty, hoarderish, if you will.
Sure.
And I worked very closely with them in talking them into doing something that they didn't want to do, but they knew they had to do it. And therefore they had to deal with Serena.
Meaning clean up and get organized?
Yes. A little more than clean up. It was mostly the family drama that was a little chaotic, believe it or not. But I was out there to kind of prove a point that there are just really good people out there that are just falling in a pit of bad luck. So when I say that I truly love to make a change, I'm not saying it just to say it. I truly walk the walk in my personal and business life. So much the name of my company is called We Can Help Change. My tagline was, just a little bit of difference can go a long way. So 2014 comes along and I really am screaming that I have no support. Corporate steps in a little bit and says, hey, if you don't have the support, we're going to make you the support. So congratulations. You are now responsible for training everyone else in Chicago, hiring, get rid of what's not working, let's fix what's broke. Around that same time, the different franchises owners that I was working with, they decided to take a different walk of life. And corporate then consumed all of Chicago. So the 4 territories that belong to somebody else now are back in the hands with corporate. So from 2014 to 2016, I did exactly what was asked of me. I hired, I trained, we brought the revenue up, we brought the team's performance up, and I created some training programs that backed all of the things that worked, and the profitability went up, RPAs went up, close rates went up, and just the integrity of the designers that we had increased. So since that was going so well, I started working more for ShelfGenie and less in my own company. So my company became to the wayside, and I absolutely just fell in love with ShelfGenie. It was a perfect fit for me. And then I decided to close my own doors and pay more attention to ShelfGenie and put all of my time and effort into just one company rather than splitting my time between 2.
Right.
And then in 2016, because it worked so well in what I did in Chicago, I was given 3 other markets to see if I could do the same thing, which I've been currently doing to date.
Yeah,
that's a long version. I'm sorry.
No. It's great. It's a really cool story. And I didn't know all the background, about your professional organizing company and all of that. So it seems like the stars really kind of aligned and that, ShelfGenie, especially the values that we have, our noble purpose really, aligns with, your own personal belief system. So, that's great. And I do know that a lot of the, procedures, the processes, a lot of, what a brand new franchise owner goes through in terms of training today, as a result of, what you had to kind of figure out on the ground, in Chicago years ago. And, that's really become a big part of what the ShelfGenie franchise system is today. So I think it was really just kind of a natural, evolution that, you evolved from a part-time designer to, corporate trainer, corporate market manager, and now, kind of the main point of contact that all of our new franchise owners work with very closely. So appreciate you sharing that background. I think it really does kind of frame up, your experience that you bring to the table very well. So kind of talking a little bit about, your role as the training and onboarding manager. Maybe just kind of explain to us, what does that process look like, right? Because I know, when I talk to people and work with them through this discovery process, that's always a big question. And honestly, probably one of the scariest parts about, starting their own business and becoming a franchisee is, what do those first couple of months look like? What do I do after I sign my franchise agreements? What happens then? So maybe kind of take us through from the time someone signs their franchise agreements to the time they would come to Atlanta for new franchise partner training.
Yeah. Okay. So during training, we really become best friends, whether you want to or not. You will talk to me multiple times in one day and a lot during the week. My job is to get you up, set up correctly, and then run your business successfully as soon as you choose to open up those doors. So it's a little bit of a tough question when you ask, what do I do? Because it always depends. And ShelfGenie loves that word, and I often use it because it truly does, because it's really going to depend on what that specific franchisee needs. So from the beginning, when you sign your papers and say, hey, this is what I'm doing, I'm buying ShelfGenie, we will have a phone call and we will get introduced before you actually even get to Atlanta to do some training. And my job is to make sure that when you do get to training, that you are set up the best way possible so that when you get to training, you don't have to listen to what we're just used to saying, because you don't know what you don't know. That's so right. My job is to introduce you to a little bit of everything, take you through what's confusing, where are the roadblocks, where do you see yourself struggling or having an issue, and here is the absolute 20 things that I need you to complete before you get to training, so that when we do start talking our ShelfGenie lingo, you don't get left in the dust and you can understand and follow along. But my job really is to, it so well that when you get to training, not only are you listening to what we're teaching you, but you also have a list of 25,000 questions to ask, because now you know what to ask because I've introduced it to you.
Yeah. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, we kind of intentionally try to have, at least 4 weeks in between the time someone signs their franchise agreements and when they come to Atlanta for training. And some people, question that a little bit, but it's not 4 weeks where you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs with nothing to do. It's 4 weeks that are pretty jam-packed full of what you might call pre-training work. And so a lot of that is kind of on the administrative side, making sure you've got, everything set up from an administrative standpoint. And then a lot of it is also just like, as you said, getting familiar with the business, familiarizing yourself with, the offering of solutions that we have, making sure you've got all the software downloaded on your computer that you'll need, so that when you come to training, you're going to really get a lot of value out of that, versus if you signed your franchise agreements and then are in training 4 days later, you definitely get some value from it, but not nearly to the extent that you will having that time to prepare. So I like the point that you made, because I think this is very true with ShelfGenie and the process that we have. You're able to really kind of tailor the training and the onboarding to each specific franchise partner. And that's not to say that there's not, a process in place. There is a process in place, and there are certain things that every new franchise partner has to do and has to complete and has to learn. But, we have franchise owners from all types of different backgrounds. And so everyone brings a different skill set and a different set of experiences to the table, meaning, some people may not need as much help or as much guidance on a certain aspect of the business, but another aspect of the business, they need triple the amount of time as what another franchise owner would. So I think it's great that you are able to kind of tailor that to whatever a particular franchise owner needs most. So I think that's a really good point.
That's my favorite part, actually, because not one person that I train has the same personality nor the same background. So what one will struggle in, the other one will not.
Yeah.
So the training, yes, there is a process, and it's a big process, you guys. There's a lot that I ask you to do. But then I introduce you so you know what to ask when you get to training. And I think that's the bigger thing, is you know what to ask because I've already introduced it.
That's right. And so I know you schedule usually a weekly call with each franchise owner. So you've got kind of a set recurring call each week leading up to training, and
That's
then
right.
usually even after training, right?
That's right. So on the fast track call, which is the very first call, the whole support team, you'll meet everybody on that call. It's a 15-minute call. Then going forward, we pick the same day and same time, and you're on a 1 hour, actually I would say about an hour and a half call with me every single week. But in addition to just that week, I always tell people, you know, when you're stuck, don't suffer in silence. Pick up the phone, give me a call. You can send me a text, you can email me, you can call me. I answer them all. So I actually end up talking to everybody every other day because I don't want people to stop doing their process because they don't understand something. I would rather you pick up the phone, let me unstick you, and then you can carry on.
Yeah, exactly. So that weekly scheduled call is not to say that they have 1 hour or an hour and a half window each week to talk with you. It's just that way you've at least got a date and time on the calendar every single week where you know you're getting together. But in between, as much as they need you, have questions, need to interact, you're there and available. And I know you do a fantastic job with that, and you are always available and you're very responsive. And, you know, for anyone on the call or listening in, if you've done validation calls with other franchise owners, or even if you're not yet to that point in the process, you know, I think this topic that we're talking about is a fantastic thing to ask our franchise owners about, you know, is what did that onboarding and training process look like for them, and how do they feel that it set them up for success when they launch their business. And, you know, depending on who you're talking to in terms of a franchise owner and maybe how long have they been in business, you know, you'll get different feedback. If you talk to a franchise owner that's been in business for 10 years, number one, they may barely remember when they opened their business anyways, but, you know, the training and onboarding has evolved quite a bit over the last 10 years. I mean, you know, as Serena mentioned earlier, you know, she was very instrumental back in, you know, 2012, 2013, even 2014, and coming up with a lot of what, you know, we now use as kind of our standard training and onboarding process. So it's evolved a lot. But I think if you were to talk to any of our franchise owners that have more recently come through training and been through onboarding, you know, not only would you hear that we do have a very good and a very thorough training process, I think you would hear, you know, overwhelming positive feedback in terms of Serena herself. I know I get that feedback regularly from new franchise owners. I mean, she does a fantastic job. So sorry, I wanted to kind of pat your back for you a little bit.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I know you won't do it yourself. So, you know, what are some of the key things that, you know, you're really coaching a brand new franchise partner to focus on, you know, like from day one? Because there is a lot to do, and some things, you know, need to happen in a methodical order, right? But in your opinion, you know, based on what you know and what you see, what are maybe 2 or 3 of like the most important things that, you know, from day one a brand new franchise owner should be focused on?
I would say number 1 is definitely don't wait to hire. If I could say anything that I see a problem with, that would be it. We either, you know, start hiring and we start quick out of the gates and then we give up on it because we think we have 2 people that are going to work out forever. I always say never stop hiring, and it's never too early. If you even have the ability to talk to friends and family, or you know somebody that would be an amazing designer or an installer, bring them to training with you. Have them set up successfully from the beginning, and then you guys are growing and learning together. If I could write that in the sky, I would. I think everybody, it should be law, and I don't think you should be able to do anything but that. But that's just Serena's opinion. The second thing I would is not drag your feet. I know a lot of times, and I'll be honest in saying this, a lot of times it looks like, oh, you know, I can get to training in 2 weeks. I can knock this out in 24 to 48 hours. But a lot of times, you know, when we've got 2 days until training, there's still a lot on the list that you thought you were going to get knocked out 2 weeks ago that still hasn't been checked.
That's right.
And the third one, I would say ask questions. I don't think people ask enough. If you don't agree with something, I think you should say you don't agree with something. If something doesn't make sense, I think you should have no qualms about telling me it doesn't make sense, so that I can give you the meat of why it actually does make sense. And there's no reason to reinvent the wheel, because we've already made those mistakes, and this works, and this is why. I think that's the other big one.
Yeah, no, I think those are all very valid points. And I would really, you know, echo the piece about start recruiting immediately. You know, I agree. I mean, we've seen on numerous occasions both sides of that, right? We've seen in some instances where, a franchise owner has, for whatever reason, dragged their feet a little bit, have not started, recruiting and assembling their team prior to training. And there's no definitive prerequisite that says you can't come to training unless you're bringing a team with you. But that being said, if you're looking to put yourself in a position as a brand new franchise owner to really hit the ground running and to take off quickly, coming to training with a team in place that is going to get the same information that you're getting, that's going to, really be on the same page with you when you then go back to your market and get ready to launch. I mean, it's just going to put you in a position to go much quicker. And we've seen plenty of examples, especially here recently. So I give you a lot of credit, Serena, for getting people prepared, to come to training and really get as much out of it as possible. We've seen some new franchise owners just absolutely blowing it out of the water. And a big part of that is because it wasn't just them that came to training. They came with a team, and they put themselves in a position to go into a home show the week after they got done with training. There's no way you'd be able to do that if just you as a new franchise owner came to training and then went home and started your recruiting efforts. So, and that's another reason that it is advantageous to have a little more time in between signing the agreements and coming to training. And there's a lot that, Serena and the rest of the support team can do to help a new franchise owner get started in those recruiting efforts. As she mentioned, you don't need to reinvent the wheel here, right? There's no silver bullet when it comes to recruiting. But that being said, we've been doing this a long time. We know very well, what type of, designers and installers are typically successful. We've got a lot of strategic ideas that we can recommend to a new franchise owner in terms of where to look for great designers and installers and how to position the opportunity and so forth. So, those are things that can start, almost immediately. So I think that's a great point worth reiterating there.
Yeah. And something I'd just like to add is also in that 4-week period, a good filler amount isn't actually in black and white in my process. However, our very first call together, when it's just you and I and not the rest of the team, I'm very clear of what is your goal, where are you trying to be, what's your target date on this, and then it's my job within those 4 weeks before you get to training that I keep you on your own path, to hit every single target that you anticipated and planned for. So yeah. It truly is custom. It really is.
No, that's great. And that's a very good point. So we just talked about kind of some best practices, or some things that make a lot of sense for a new franchise owner to really focus on starting out. What are some of the things that you've seen challenging? And some of this may overlap with what we just talked about, but what are some of the pitfalls that you've seen a brand new franchise owner fall into, and what advice would you give to maybe try to avoid any of those pitfalls?
I would definitely say the biggest pitfall I see and help Z's through is not hiring. It's got to be the number one. I see them starting at the beginning or not starting at all. Now appointments are starting to come. Your marketing dollars are going out the door. Now you have to be Superman or Superwoman and try to become your designer while you're trying to find a designer and while you're trying to market. You can't do it all. And I can speak from experience because I tried and failed miserably. My team suffered when I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do. And that was, how do I get more leads? How do I get more revenue? What home shows can I be in? Because I was too busy trying to go run my appointments because I didn't necessarily trust somebody else to do the process that I would do, right? So that became my own biggest hill to jump, is putting forth the effort of learning how to trust and be able to train people to do exactly what I was doing. And then the other pitfall I see, it ties in with training, is we get to a certain point and we've got an okay team. We're kind of average, which isn't bad. And then we stop hiring. And then 2 weeks go by and somebody says, hey, I won the lotto, I'm moving to Hawaii. And the installer says, and I'm retiring and I'm quitting. And then in a 14-day period, we went from a team to 2 people. And now you're being kind of held hostage and it gets a little chaotic. So if I can give any word of advice, it would go back to what I originally said is hire and never stop. Never stop hiring. When you think you got a good team, there's always room for improvement. It could get better.
Oh, absolutely. And that is such a good point. And I know that's something that I really try to reiterate to people as I work through this process with them. And, I think especially on the designer side, that should really be the approach. And I know that one of the kind of common pushbacks you may get from a franchise owner is, well, I don't currently have enough appointment flow coming in to justify a third designer or maybe even a fourth designer. And so what would you say to that?
So I would definitely touch on, and I don't know how much everybody knows about what we call self-generating, but self-generating is when we're teaching our designers, it's not a one-way street with our company. You're no better than I, and I'm no better than you. We're equals, we're business partners. And it's not about me just giving you appointments because I'm paying, X amount of dollars for these, but it's a two-way street. I also make sure that I'm training and teaching them how to go and find their own appointments. Yep. And the bonus is when they do find these appointments, I'm not writing the check to the marketing department. They did all of the work. They invested all of their time and all of their money. Therefore, they saved me that heartache. So I double their commission because they did all the work. But I definitely teach them that we don't complain about when we're not getting appointments because they know the first thing I'm going to say is, what are you doing to get your own appointments?
That's right.
Let's see where we can fix things and where can we, twerk this and let's make some changes. Maybe we're in the wrong spot. Or are you even doing it? No, then I put it back on your plate.
Yeah, such a good point. And I know a couple of the folks on the call have been through a pro forma review with me. That's a standard part of the process. And one of the things we talk a lot about when we're doing this pro forma exercise is, the importance of having designers that can self-generate. I mean, if you're looking at, what your bottom line could look like over the course of a year, it is drastically better, much stronger bottom line if you have a pretty good mix of designer self-generated appointment. And the reason is, you hit the nail on the head. It's all about the marketing cost, right? It's how much does it cost to acquire a new client? Well, a lot of the marketing and advertising that we do, you've got a hard cost associated with just getting a designer in the door to run an appointment. And then it's up to them to close it. And then so based on, how cost effectively you're generating appointments and then how good your designers are at closing, that's going to determine, what your marketing cost to generate a new client is. And ultimately that's going to factor into your bottom line and your net profit. So the more of this kind of, self-generated appointments coming from your design team, the lower that overall, what we call cost per appointment is. And what Serena was mentioning earlier is what most franchise owners will do and what we do in corporate markets is, you kind of incentivize these designers to self-generate appointments by offering to pay them a higher commission when they sell one. And the way to look at that extra commission is, well, that's my marketing cost to generate this self-generated sell, right? And so a couple things that are nice about that. One, it's typically less. So let's just do a quick example. So you said double the commission. So most franchise owners, what we recommend is pay a 10% commission to a designer when they make a sell, meaning if you're doubling that on a self-generated sell, that should be a 20% commission, right? So some people look at that like, wow, double the commission. How do I make any money on that? Well, you're paying an extra 10%. So essentially you have a 10% marketing cost to generate a self-generated sell from a designer. The beautiful thing about it is you only have that cost if it sells, right? If a designer self-generates an appointment, goes in and doesn't sell it, well, that sucks. We missed out on an opportunity, but it didn't cost the franchise owner anything, right? So that's really where those become really, really valuable. So I wasn't even planning on going here, but I'm glad you brought it up because I think it's so important for people to understand. And I can tell you, with our franchise owners in the system today, the most successful owners, especially from a profitability standpoint, they've got a good mix of these self-generated sales coming in from their designers. And so, number one, you got to set it as an expectation when you're recruiting a designer, right? So, if you're talking about it and setting that as a expectation up front, you're more likely to get that. And then there's some kind of strategic ways that you can go about recruiting designers that might be better suited to self-generate. You're a good example of that, Serena. You had a professional organizing business before. My guess is you were dealing with people, back then when you had your company, that would have very likely been interested in ShelfGenie and the solutions that we offer.
Absolutely.
Right? So you were probably better suited to do more self-gen than someone that, just didn't have their foot in this space at all. So those are areas, again, that, Serena can really coach a new franchise owner in terms of, hey, you need to start recruiting. But by the way, here's a sample job ad. Here's an interview guide. Here are some places that we've had success for years, going and finding people that are very qualified and very well suited to be a designer for ShelfGenie. So no, that's a really good point. Like I said, I wasn't even planning on going there, but I'm glad it came up because I think it's, the more people understand that, the better. And I agree. Even franchise owners that have been in business for 5, 6, 7 years, I know some of them struggle with it, where they've got their 2 or 3 designers that they've had for, 3 or 4 years, and they've never really added to their team. And the way I look at it, especially from a designer standpoint, is if you're recruiting the right type of designers, if you're setting the right expectation, there's no such thing as too many designers on your team. Because if you've done it right, you've built out essentially a sales team that's bringing more business to the table for you as a franchise owner.
Exactly. I've never heard anybody complain that they have too many rock stars on their team. That is one complaint I'm still waiting for.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, good stuff. Really good stuff. I'm going to, because we've got about 20 minutes left, so I'm going to unmute everyone and just see if any questions have come up. I think we've covered some really good stuff here, but for anyone on the call, is there any questions that you might have for Serena or anything that you'd like for her to expand on that she's talked about?
Hey, Wes, it's Phil. I do have a question.
Sure. Go ahead, Phil.
Hey, hi, Serena.
Hi, Phil.
Hi, a question about closing the sale.
Yeah.
In your experience, what has been your closure rate in that DC area? And when you do lose a sale, what is the leading cause of losing that sale? Why did you lose it?
Okay, so 2-part question. I'm going to answer the first one first, Phil. My close rate in DC currently is 56%. But the second part of that question is, if I lose a sale, what caused the loss of that sale? I hate to tell you this, but it's going to depend because I have to look at it as in which designer did I have run that appointment? And did we lose the sale because my designer was maybe off that day, maybe forgot a part of the process? So I keep very close communications with all of my designers. They all call me every day. I speak to every single one of my designers, and we verbally walk through appointments in what happened. And I can say if we are not getting the sale, one of the reasons is because the intro call, which is something that we do before we arrive to the design appointment, we make contact with the client. I'd have to say 40% of the time I'll blame it on the intro call. I absolutely will. It was done very poorly. I can say the second part of why we didn't get the sale was because of the presentation wasn't as good as it could have been. And we were probably trying to sell them a product and instead of trying to sell them on the experience that we're supposed to be bringing to the table. I would say those are my big two. And then the small percentage I would say is just not everybody is a ShelfGenie client, but I would put that in less than 10%.
Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah, that's good.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, that's a great question, Phil. And just to give you some perspective to the first part of that question, where Serena said the close rate with her team in DC is currently 56%. That's strong. The system average close rate, this is from 2018, was about 48%. So that's kind of, average. So she's got her team, performing above average in that market. And I would echo everything Serena said. What you'll hear from a client a lot of times if they decide not to purchase is, well, it's too expensive, right? But that's not really the reason. The reason that in their mind maybe it's too expensive is all the reasons that Serena just pointed out. Essentially, the designer didn't do a good enough job building value in the client's eyes. And if our sales process is done right, first of all, it's not really a sales process. It's more of a consultation. But it's all about providing a solution, not a product. And that solution includes more than just the physical, aspect of it. It's the all-around experience that the client gets. So that's really the training that a designer goes through is, how to run that consultative appointment, how to create a solution and an experience, not be an order taker and come in and sell products. So that is usually where if a designer's struggling, it's usually with building the value.
Yeah, and I'd like to just add a little bit on that, because I think some designers along the way forget that you're not hard sales. We didn't force our business on you. You saw a pretty advertisement, whether it be in Valpak or a paper, and you wanted this product. You're the one that called ShelfGenie to make the appointment. So I often have to remind my designers, you guys, you're not going in there to sell them. You're going in there to help them execute something that they had already anticipated on doing.
That's right. We're not going door to door selling vacuum cleaners here.
You got it. Thank goodness for that.
Yeah, we probably wouldn't have a 56% close rate if we were, I had to guess. So no, really, really good question, Phil. And hopefully that helps to clarify some. Any other questions for anyone on the call? God, I muted a couple of people and I'm having trouble getting them unmuted here. Tommy, Jennifer, anything from either of you? If
no
not,
questions here.
You guys know I can talk forever. I've got plenty more.
Let's not have him do that.
So let's talk a little bit about, so we've talked a lot about pre-training. What does the actual training in Atlanta look like? What does that consist of? You normally come into Atlanta for those trainings, don't you?
Sometimes. Mostly Scott does them.
Okay. So for the ones that you've been a part of, though, what could a new franchise owner expect for the time that they spend in Atlanta?
They're really just learning the entire process. It's a lot to soak in. I like to say, we're shoving 5 years of information in your head in 5 days. So don't forget your pen and paper. Make sure you arrive with really good questions so you don't forget to ask them when they're there. But we introduce you to everything. The 3D program, the software that we called SketchUp. We teach you how to create a quote. We teach you how the hiring process, what it looks like. We teach you how to use our CRM, which is Wish Portal, pretty much the brain of our business and where everything is held on this platform.
Yep.
We teach you how to run a design appointment, make an intro call. We actually walk you through a live scenario and kind of role play so that you can actually feel what it looks like to be on the other side as a client or the designer. Let's see, there's our take you through the products that we actually hold or that we can sell, what the designers are developing for each of your clients. Here's some of the custom solutions we make. We go over a little bit of history of the company. We do a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's a lot.
It's a lot of information to retain.
A pretty short period of time, again, making it all the more important that you have plenty of time and put in the work up front so that when you get there, you're going to be able to absorb more of that. I'll add to that too, because the full training is an 8-day training. So 3 days of that is installer training. So even though most franchise owners do not do installations, we really don't encourage franchise owners to do installations. That's a part of the business that's usually best, delegated to installers that you bring onto your team. But it is valuable for a franchise owner to go through the same installer training that all of the installers go through. It just gives you a better understanding of that side of the business, puts you in a better position to, recruit installers, set the right expectations, and manage that side of the business. So that's 3 days of the 8-day training in Atlanta, in addition to everything that Serena just mentioned. So after training, usually most people have it set up so that, they come to training and then they're opening pretty shortly thereafter. We usually try to schedule openings on the first day of a month, and we usually have training the third week of every month. So a lot of times there's like maybe a 1 week period in between training and opening. So after training, that's it. They're on their own. You send them off to fly, and you don't talk to them anymore, right?
Absolutely not. That's probably when I talk to you even more. So wait, I don't go away.
You don't expect people to retain 100% of everything they get when they come to Atlanta for training?
Absolutely not. I send you a bottle of Tylenol in the mail because I know you're going to need it. Your head's going to feel like it's going to explode, and you're not exactly sure what you remember and what you don't, which exactly goes back to the point of this is why we meet a month before you go to training, so that I am introducing everything to you. When you get to training in Atlanta, you've already been introduced to this. So by logging back into my process, it refreshes your brain and, oh yeah, I do remember this. And then we pretty much just debrief as well. Like, what did you get from training? What are some questions maybe that you had that you weren't able to touch on because there wasn't enough time or hours in the day? We make sure there's no problems there. And then you're opening your business, and then I'm just here to support you whenever you get stuck. All the way to, hey, Serena, we're in the design appointment and there's a hole in the wall and I have no idea what to do with this. You take a picture and I walk you through it. I'm literally holding your hand when you need me to, and I'll let it go when you need me to.
Yeah. And so I know you'll do those, you'll still keep your weekly scheduled call, a lot of times for a couple months after training. Sometimes it may be longer than that. Sometimes maybe not quite as long. Again, all just kind of depending on, the franchise partner and what their needs are. One thing I did want to circle back to, you talked a little bit about the SketchUp training, which again is the 3D design software that we use. I get questions about that pretty often. When you look at SketchUp, it kind of looks intimidating in terms of, how am I going to learn this? So one of the questions I get a lot is, do you need prior experience with a program like that? Or do you need, experience with CAD or anything like that? So what would your answer to those type of questions be?
I would say you absolutely need no experience to do anything in ShelfGenie or use anything that ShelfGenie has as a tool to help you. Anything can be trained on. The only thing I can't teach people how to do is have good communication skills and be able to treat a person like a person. If you don't have that, you're just 86, right?
That's right.
But the SketchUp program, I can teach anybody how to use SketchUp, whether they've worked on CAD before or not. And all I need is 1 hour of time.
Yeah. I mean, the assumption coming in really is that, nothing, you've never touched anything like SketchUp before. Anything beyond that just gives you a leg up.
Yep. And maybe not even a leg up. Sometimes it can actually hurt you when you have more experience because you're expecting it to be complicated, meaning I want to draw vertical walls and windows, and it's not. ShelfGenie as a company, when we first rolled out this program, they took all of the hard work out of it, and they've actually pre-built every component that we would need to build a kitchen. It's already done in the background for you. So you literally, all you have to do is open up the program, go find where you saved that cabinet, and you drop it on a floor. It is that simple. It's not, it looks intimidating, but it's not. It just 1 hour, 1 hour, that's all you need, and you will learn SketchUp, and you could build your entire kitchen in 30 minutes.
Yep. Yeah. I wanted you to speak to that because I feel like sometimes people don't believe me when I tell them that it's that easy, because it does. I mean, it looks, like it would be more complicated than that. But, again, it's part of the system that we've created. There's a lot of great templates that you can work off of. And then, as someone learns more and more about it and gets more proficient with it, the more customization they can incorporate into their designs, and the more they can kind of branch outside of some of the templates and things that we have built into it. So awesome. Last thing I wanted to kind of hit on and ask about is, one of the things we try to do for every new franchise partner, I shouldn't say try to do, one of the things we do for every new franchise partner is, have Serena or someone on the corporate markets team go out and work in the field with them at some point after they've opened for business. So could you speak a little bit to that and what that looks like? Because the timing of that, and then also what you're doing when you go out in the field varies a little bit, again, just depending on the franchise owner, what they have going on, and what their needs really are. So talk about that a little bit, if you would.
Yeah, again, it's definitely going to depend on who that franchise partner is, because everybody has their weaknesses and strengths. So once you do open your business, you have the ability to bring myself or one of the other corporate market managers to your territory, and it's specifically up to you to let us know what exactly you need help in. Some people are really good at recruiting and they don't need help in that area, but maybe somebody that recruits is not as good as training their folks. So maybe I could come in and help you train a team that you created. If that was the case, I'd always ask that they have some experience, meaning did they do some practice appointments? Did they do some ride-alongs with other designers in the area? So they know a little bit of information at the beginning. Maybe you need help doing your first home show because you don't feel comfortable running your first home show by yourself. There's others where maybe we're throwing a grand opening party at maybe a senior center and inviting 300 friends and family that we already know, and we want to have a grand opening. Maybe that's the idea. So you really can go out of the box as much as a franchisee would like, and I often push people to go out of the box and not do the normal norm, but it's really up to you. You get us for 2 days, and this is the one time that you're actually driving the bus and you're saying, this is what I specifically need help in. Come to my market on these 2 days and help me along with that.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great way that we're able to really help new franchise owners jumpstart is, getting out in their market and working with them. And, there's a variety of different ways we can get involved and help. And again, just kind of up to that particular franchise owner and what they're going to get the most value out of. And there's some amazing, stories or case studies, whatever you may want to call it, where Serena or someone on that team has gone out, spent literally just a couple of days in the market with a franchise owner. In some cases, it could be a brand new franchise owner. Some cases could be someone that's been in business for a while and they're struggling in a certain aspect of the business, or, maybe just struggling in general. And, literally just a couple of days of focusing on the right things can make a drastic difference and lead to really big turnarounds in some cases. So, the field visits that, the support teams do, that's not limited to one, all time, standard right out of the gate, you're automatically getting one. There's no cost to that, but, the support team's always there and available to get out in the field and work with franchise owners and their teams. There's some franchise owners that take advantage of that more than others, but it's really a good resource. So that was really all I had. I'll unmute it again real quick and see if anyone else has any questions or anything for Serena before we let her go enjoy her birthday today.
Hey, I'll ask one more, Wes. This is Phil.
Yeah. Go ahead, Phil. Thanks.
Hopefully it'll be a quick one.
Sure.
I'd like to hear Serena, I'd like to hear your insight into a little more of the persona of the customer. Wes has shared a little bit of that with me, but I'd like to hear hear from you. And how would you define your customer?
Oh, gosh.
That is the ones that ultimately you purchase.
Yeah. I give a lot of pushback on this. I'll be completely honest with you, Phil. I think a lot of times I hear throughout the system that we have a 55 plus customer. While I would agree that 55 plus is probably 70% of our business, I think oftentimes that other 30%, when we're trying to set up to do home shows, what we're not thinking about is the people that just pay for convenience. And these 40-year-olds and 30-year-olds, they'll pay for convenience. They'll pay because they're annoyed that they see a bunch of air in their cabinet and they know they can maximize that space. I think it's also the people with $5 million in the bank and this extra sense of I've got an abundance of cash flow. I'm not worried about spending money. That's who our client is. We're not the cheapest. I think that statement is false. I think it's the normal family that utilizes their kitchen and knows exactly how chaotic making a dinner with 3 kids and 2 working folks can be when we can't access the items that we need to, and the amount of time can be cut in half. So I would say it's all over the board, but I would add to that and say that's also where our intro call becomes super important. And I teach my designers that the best question you can ask is, what specific frustration made you call ShelfGenie? Because if I can get that information before I walk into the home, then I don't have to take 30 minutes trying to figure out how to help you design. Because if you are 75 years old and you're on a fixed income and you have a Social Security check coming in and you can barely make the bills, I'm not going to give you an $11,000 price. I'm going to keep it very simple, but still very functional. I'm going to make the design right for exactly what you need. And that includes thinking about the money that they're spending. So I'm definitely asking the question because some people have new hips and new knees, and bending down is not even an option. I mean, this is no longer a want. This is absolutely I need it if I want to stay in my home, and I love cooking, and I can't get down on the ground. So that's no longer a want, that's a need. And then you have somebody else that is, I see all this wasted space, or I just want to pay for the convenience. I want to become organized. The answers are unlimited, but I think it's important to find out the answer before we even get to the home.
Yeah, good answer. I appreciate that.
Not a problem. That was a great question.
It is a good question. And I think that's where, our ability to highly customize the solutions that we provide really does put us in a position to work with a wide range of clients. To your point, Serena, a lot of people would say, yeah, we focus on the 55 and up demographic. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good fit for our business and what we do. And a lot of our clients probably do fit into that category, but certainly not all. We're definitely not limited to only working with someone that's 55 or older. A lot of younger families, especially in this day and age, convenience is becoming more and more important. So yeah, those are good points. And that was a great question, Phil.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this has been good, Serena. Thank you again. I know that everyone that joined the call today and anyone that listens in after the fact is going to get a ton of value from this. There's been a lot of really good information shared. So again, thank you for spending some time with us today on your birthday. So happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
Tell Scott you have my permission to take the day off tomorrow. Go have a long weekend.
Okay.
And appreciate everyone else for joining us today. If you guys want to follow up with Serena, let me pull this slide up before we wrap up. So you've got our email address here, serena.close@shelfgenie.com. Feel free to reach out to Serena. I know she'd be happy to answer any additional questions that you might have. And, for anyone that does, move through this process and we determine that ShelfGenie is a good fit, just know that Serena will be your light at the end of the tunnel. You'll be working very closely with her, as you begin your ShelfGenie journey. So again, thanks to everyone. Really appreciate everyone's time. Other than that, I'm here to help however I can. Everyone should know how to get in touch with me. So I hope everyone has a great Thursday. If I don't talk to you before, have an awesome weekend. And I look forward to talking with all of you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, Wes.
Bye-bye.